All right, so the planning board members are going to have the stage for the first half hour or so, and you're going to each have 1 minute for an opening statement, okay? And Mr. Clark, you won the luck of the draw, didn't you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Opening statement, difficult position, I've been on it before. It's hard to get the consensus of everybody because a lot of people, they don't show up until the last meeting. We spend years developing what we think is a good program, but it's hard to work in a vacuum, and we really need more people to come in at the beginning stages of our programs to help us build. And that's what I'd like to try to do this year, well, if I get elected, to build better planning. Thank you.
Ms. Herstenberg?
I have never run for public office, but I really want to help the community, and I do have experience planning my own construction projects where I renovated homes that I bought because they were either foreclosed on or they were in poor condition, and I worked with contractors and understood, how I needed to set limits for them and give them guidelines, and then they told me, what my options were. So I understand the process of trying to plan a project, but I don't, pretend to know anything about doing something on such a large basis. So what I would want to do is learn from the people that are already on the planning board and help them, and also get input from the community as to what their wants and requirements are.
Thank you. And we know that, I know because I've been told that the big issue in town, of course, is zoning amendment 15. So we're going to start discussing that. And as I said, we've received these questions. I remind the audience, if you have other questions, just hold them up on the cards and somebody will collect those. So let's talk about zoning amendment 15. Do you support that zoning amendment? And we'll start with Ms. Furstenberg.
I support voting yes on zoning amendment 15 because as it's been explained to me, at the present time, if you have the right amount of land and the right amount of frontage, you are permitted to build on that a large housing development. Like, I have a lot that if I merged it with my neighbor's lot, from what I found out at the planning department downstairs, you could probably put about 30 units on 2 acres because there's about 500 linear feet of footage. And the way it was explained to me is I would have a right to do that, and it wouldn't be discussed with my neighbors. And I don't think my neighbors would really like it very much, so I think that they bought their homes with the understanding that the neighborhood looked a certain way. So in order to change that radically, I feel like they should be entitled to voice their opinions and be able to vote it down if they chose to. But I do agree that on a case-by-case basis, we should be allowed to put any kind of development any place we want to. But I think we should review each case individually and talk to the stakeholders, abutters, and other people that live in the neighborhood that are concerned about traffic, and do each project on a individual case-by-case basis.
And Mr. Clark, your views on that?
Yes, we spent,
Bring it a little bit closer. Thank you.
we spent 2 years developing Article 15, well, the article before this article is going to rescind, so I'm not sure which way that goes, but I'm for the old article for the development in town, because what I've seen as a builder is we're chopping up our open spaces. We are just chopping them up into 3-acre, 5-acre lots, and it's just going away. And it's just not feasible to do that. I mean, we have water in town, we have sewer in town. That's where the development should go. And we've had this policy in for now 2 years, and everyone's worried about the big, huge developments. there has been no huge developments. The economics do not promote it. I mean, people just don't go, oh, I'm gonna put 30 houses here. I won't be able to sell them here because, you know, nobody wants to live that close to people. So what we wanna do is try to keep it in the main town, where we have the infrastructure to support it. Not build it out and tear up, nice green spaces.
Okay, Mr. Clark, you're gonna answer first. We're gonna keep going back and forth. So you're up next, and the question is, if Amendment 15 passes, what should take its place?
Well, we'd have to go through meetings again.
Do you have a theory of what kind of zoning would take its place in those meetings?
Different. It would have to go through another about 2 years of process. If we got rid of it, it's the will of people. I firmly support however the town votes, but we still need a policy in town that says 80% of our houses don't meet zoning right now. They have to, if 80% of everything doesn't meet zoning, there's something wrong with the zoning. You have to change it so they all meet it. And everyone loves the look of the town, so why isn't that acceptable? So we'd have to have a discussion for about 2 years and then come up with another policy.
Okay, Ms. Furstenberg, same question. If the amendment passes, what do you see as the next steps?
Okay, I'm prefacing this by saying that I really don't have any knowledge of how the zoning, how the planning board works, so I would have to go in there as someone who's learning the process. But my feeling is that any developer who came in and wanted to build something should be given fair consideration, and his ideas or her ideas should be vetted in front of the neighbors, and we should entertain any suggestions of building especially affordable housing for people that are just starting out.
Okay, let's continue with the topic of affordable housing. Do you believe that Peterborough needs more housing options, and particularly for, say, under $50,000 a year family income? Ms. Furstenberg?
Well, I helped my daughter buy her first home last year, and it's a condo up in Prospect Heights. And it was the least expensive piece of starter property we could find. And it was $106,000, and it was in very poor condition. She and I went around, and we like to recycle different things that we find, like we go to Habitat for Humanity and buy things from them, and we buy kitchen displays from, we bought one from Beltates, and we've renovated it for $30,000, and so she's into it for about $140,000. And it's a modest and just barely affordable home for someone starting out, making in the low 40s. And there needs to be more of that available, because even for her, where I was fully invested, you know, emotionally, monetarily, everything, it was a really rough struggle for her to buy her first home. And I think we need to look at some of the vacant properties we have and perhaps consider doing things like micro apartments like they have near the seaport in Boston, because I'm kind of in love with those, and if they didn't cost $1 million, I would buy one. And I would just love to see some smaller units for people starting out so that they can get their own space and be able to afford to live on their salaries, to pay their student loans, to pay their car payments, and just get the kind of start in life that I was able to get when I was in my 20s.
Mr. Clark, what do you think about the need for more options and affordable?
There needs to be more affordable housing. The problem is I'm a contractor. If I buy a lot in Peterborough, they're going from anywhere from $80,000 to $120,000 a lot. I cannot build a $100,000 house and put it on there. There's just no markup there. The economics doesn't work. I have to get a lot between $20,000 and $40,000 to make it economically safe. There are no lots in the town, and that's why we developed this program, so we could subdivide some of these smaller lots that are already in towns, already in little districts, that the houses are already close, so we drive the price of the lot down, so we could buy, build affordable housing. If that's economic, until you actually sell one of those things, I don't know if it is. I mean, so, but I'm for affordable housing, because when When I first tried to buy a house, I couldn't afford anything in Peterborough. And finally, I bought the last house in Greenfield, in Peterborough. That's all I could afford. And that was $79,000, and that was in 1988. And that was every penny I had. And that's the only way I'm in Peterborough, is I'm on the very edge.
You know, I spend a lot of time in Concord, and there was a bill going through the legislature to allow tiny houses, the houses on wheels, approximately 400 square feet they were talking about. And I believe the outcome of that is that there will be a study commission of it. But what do you see as the possibility in Peterborough, assuming that zoning can be developed and this study commission makes recommendations? What do you see as the possibility of tiny houses in Peterborough? Mr. Clark, you're up first.
All this comes back to economics. I mean, if you can afford to build them, yes, you can sell them. But even up by the church, they went in there, and they were supposed to be inexpensive houses. They got the lots pretty reasonable, but the market dictates what's going to sell. And right now, we have a higher income median, and those houses, I don't know, they were $240 to start, and they just went from there. So I'm not sure if a tiny house would do it. Rock Farm was supposed to be tiny houses. Look at all those; they're not tiny. They were supposed to be affordable housing. They're not. It's economics. I don't know if you can legislate economics.
Ms. Furstenberg? Tiny houses.
Tiny houses. Well, if I didn't love the lot I live on at the top of Kaufman as much as I do, and I merged it with my neighbor's lot, it's about 2 acres with the frontage. It would look very cute with a whole bunch of little tiny houses right up there. But the way, I mean, honestly, all different colors, and I have like, you know, I have like a filtered view of Packmanag on the one side, Mountainag on the other. I mean, it's adorable. People would love it. But the problem is, I also know that I come from Greater Boston, and my friends down in Linfield and in Carlisle, they would see those. They'd come up to my neighborhood and see those and say, oh my gosh, I could just like write a check for that, because their homes down there, they can take an equity line because their homes are worth $1 million and just snap those up. And then we run into the situation where the neighborhood was gentrified, the houses cost a whole lot of money, and then the people that we're trying to serve by providing tiny homes wouldn't be able to get their foot in the door. So it is definitely, as Richard said, a real struggle to get affordable housing built and keep it affordable. And it's definitely a problem.
In a quick answer, we just got a card that said, define affordable housing. How would, that is a good question.
Yeah,
Ms. Furstenberg, how would you define it?
Okay, I've done the calculation multiple times because although they're inactive licenses, I do have real estate licenses in both Mass and New Hampshire. And a person earning $50,000 a year, and I also know this because my daughter is in the same income range, can qualify with a bank at standard rates of with 10% down, 5% down. They'd qualify for about $110,000, not including a condo fee. If they had to pay a condo fee, that would up it. So if you figure a family making $50,000 can afford $110,000, that is not a very expensive home. And you know, I've seen on TV where people live in the tiny houses, and I mean, it looks great on TV, but I can imagine that must get on your nerves after a while. So I don't know how that really would work out for them, but 110 appears to be the price.
Okay, we've got a number from you, Mr. Clark. How would you define it? As someone in the business,
affordable is a very tricky word. Affordable to me is not affordable to one of my workers. I would have to pick one of my guys that work for me, what I pay them. And I would say about between 120 and 140. That's about as much as they can handle. And they would have to have another income. They'd have to have a partner or a spouse or something. They'd have to have help. But I can't see it ever being less than that unless it's an apartment, and that's where most of the people live.
and that brings up kind of the question that was asked, could we renovate vacant buildings and repurpose them for affordable housing? And that's certainly been done in some places. Manchester's doing it. What do you think, Mr. Clark? Could we do that?
No, there's no vacant houses.
Well, not houses, but buildings, old schools, old hospitals, you don't have those.
Yeah, I don't know where they are. I know the SEE building is open, but I think you'd have to change the zoning. That'd take a few years. I don't see that we have I mean, when I first moved here in '76, all the mills were closing down. There was plenty of opportunity there to do it. But lately, no. Maybe they'd say if we had a big economic crash and a lot of people left, then we could find those buildings, but they're not here.
Well, we're not wishing that on
No.
anybody. Ms. Furstenberg, what about you? Are you aware of some vacant buildings?
I actually do, because prices are much higher where I raised my daughter in Andover, Mass. And a lot of times I looked at homes that looked similar to the one that's at the corner of Pine and Cheney. Correct me if I'm not saying it right. And there's a big mansion there, and then there's another mansion at the corner of Old Street and 101. And in Andover, we had lots of buildings like that that had been converted into condos. You know, like you'd take a building like the one at the corner of Cheney and Pine Street and put probably 8 units in there, and each of them would sell for about, well, in Andover, probably 500, but let's say here 300. And people love those, and they're beautiful, and they're all unique. Every apartment you go into in those has its own character. It's not cookie cutter. So that's what I do. I pick the mansions that people can't afford to live in them by themselves anyways. They can't afford to heat them or take care of them, and I break those into condos.
All right, thank you. We talked about what would happen if Amendment 15 passes and we get rid of the current zoning. What about if it does not pass? That is, the status quo is maintained by the voters next Tuesday. What steps should the planning board take moving forward? Ms. Furstenberg?
Well, if that is what the voters want, then we will roll with that, and that is what we'll do. And I have to say to you that you know, there is a temptation on my part to think about doing a tiny house, little village at the top of my street. But I'm a considerate enough neighbor that even if, you know, I was allowed to do it, I'd probably go and ask people. But, you know, from what Richard's saying, having this amendment in place hasn't done anything yet, so maybe things would just kind of keep going along the way they were going. But as I said, I still have a lot to learn because I don't know anything about serving on the planning board.
Mr. Clark, what about you?
Well,
It stays
if it
as
stays in place, I'm pretty sure that the planning board would continue to modify it. We're constantly modifying things because things don't change, stay the same. You have to have room to adjust because the environment changes for everybody. The economy changes, what people want change. I mean, back in the 70s, I don't think anybody wanted to be green. Now everyone wants to be green, so that's what we do. So it's a constantly changing thing, so we would just slowly modify it to hopefully get to what most of the people want.
Okay, thank you. There is, no, hold that one off. I've got a lot of questions here, people. You are good. You're really good at providing them. So this debate over zoning in Peterborough has apparently caused a divide among the citizens. What will you do on the planning board to try to heal that divide and let the town move forward in a more unified way? Mr. Clark?
That's an interesting question. I don't think there's a divide. I think there's just education. A lot of people jump to the assumption that just because we can do it, that someone will come with a bad apple and do it. Most people are decent people. They really are. I mean, they're not going to go in a neighborhood and put 500 tiny houses, you know? They just won't do it. I mean, and economics wouldn't allow it. Someone was gonna get upset, someone would get a lawyer or whatever. But basically, you have to give the people the right to at least explore these opportunities and keep the development in the town center where we have the space, we've already used it, and we have the infrastructure. So I think it's just, I see them upset, but I don't think they're really realizing you can't always play what if. What if the world ends tomorrow? You can't play that game.
So let me bring you back to the question I was trying to get at, I think. What do you see your role as a planning board member in trying to bring the town together to move forward in a positive way?
Well, I think when we do planning, it's really hard to get participation. I mean, we give pizza away, we try to get people involved, we do everything. But it's very, very hard until you make a decision. Then once you make a decision, then it polarizes. There is no, we're all in it together, it's them against us. And I'm not sure, it's not them against us. We're all here together, guys. I mean, we can get it done. So just education.
We've tried pizza in my town too. Ms. Furstenberg, do you see that divide that the questioner did? And if so, what do you think can be done to bring the town together one way or another to move forward?
I really don't know about any divide. I mean, I've heard rumors about it, but I'm just getting to meet people here. I've only gotten active in politics in the town since I got a tax bill that like scared the living whatever out of me because it was like a 30% increase, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And that's the only thing that like motivated me to get out of my fortress of solitude, as we call it, and come down into the town and meet you guys. So I generally am known at work as being super friendly, and I'm the person that they always send in when they're trying to like get people to be friends. And so I'm sure it'll all work out however it needs to. I'm not concerned.
Thank you very much. So I have a couple of other questions that are not directly related to that zoning amendment. And one is a question specifically from Mr. Clark, who is running for the Budget Committee, Planning Board, and ZBA. And I'll read the question. I didn't write this. Somebody out there did. While I admire his dedication to the town and willingness to serve, I'd like to know whether he realizes that only one member of the planning board is allowed to also serve on the ZBA. And Dario Carrara already holds that position. Therefore, if you, Mr. Clark, you were to get elected to both the planning board and the ZBA, you could only serve on one of those boards, so which one would you choose?
I would pick the ZBA, just because I haven't served on it. And Dario's term would end, I'm pretty sure, in 2 years, so I would assume the other role as a full-time membership, as the double after that.
Okay, thank you. And then a question, we'll start with Ms. Furstenberg. How many municipal meetings, including planning, master plan, committee, zoning, etc., would you say you have attended this year before you actually entered the race?
I've been to about 3 select board meetings, 1 planning meeting, and one of the big town hall deliberative sessions. So that's about it.
Thank you. And Mr. Clark, how about you? What meetings, you've been on a board, so you've been to those.
Yes,
what about other meetings?
Besides the board meetings?
Yes.
None, I wouldn't say, but they kind of cover it with the budget committee. I'm on almost all of them there, so.
Can't hear you.
Things like very close to me. I don't like it. Anyways, I said I didn't go to any other meetings except for the ones at the budget committee. The budget committee, we're there, I don't know, all the time. So I've heard all reports and the data. I stopped going to the planning board because I wasn't on it. I would have thought that I might have been a, I don't know. If you're not on the board and you go to it afterwards, it kind of influences the other people, and they should have the right to decide on their own.
You're not saying that the townspeople shouldn't go to board meetings, are you?
No, not at
Oh,
all.
okay, all right.
I'm just saying that if I were to go to a planning board meeting, then the questions that would happen, well, it just wouldn't work.
Okay. Last question for you two before we move on to the select board. As you think about your own personal experience, your expertise, what do you think is most relevant to the work of the planning board? And Mr. Clark, you're up first.
Most relevant to the planning board. Well, the planning board is basically, we're trying to plan out, we're trying to envision the scope of what the people in the master plan have developed. So it's like raising your children. You try to send them on the right way, but they kind of waver, then you bring them back in. And they waver again, you bring them back in. So that's basically what the planning board does. So we're trying to keep the master plan going in the right direction, but we're not perfect. I mean, no parent is. So we just try to do what we can.
I like this notion. The town is like a wayward child. Fascinating. Ms. Furstenberg, I totally forgot my question. Oh, what in your personal experience and expertise do you feel is most relevant to this position on the planning board?
Sorry. I also think of houses as and buildings as kind of being like children or people. And any home that I've ever renovated, I've always looked at it and said, what are the features that I can bring out in that are the best? And if I were on the planning board, then I'd be looking at bigger projects and lots of land and things like that, and talking to the other people on board and saying, okay, what can we do to bring out the best in this location to help people and just do development in a responsible way that keeps the town super attractive and keeps it a place that people from far and near come to for like day trips so that they can just get away from real life and go to the diner and like go climb Mount Monadnock and do all the stuff that like is really fun. That's like what everybody thinks about when I tell them that I live here. So I would also try to, just be respectful of the fact that a lot of the people there, all of them have more experience in it than I do, and I would have to learn from them.
Thank you very much. And thank you. I think it's become
Crop TV.